Miles, thanks so much. Development of Boeing's MAX aircraft began almost a decade ago, but airlines did not start flying the planes until 2017. Seth Kaplan is managing partner of Airline Weekly. That's a publication focused on the global airline industry. Welcome. Let's talk a little bit about this control system. Kind of walk us through what the problems are with it.
Yeah, a system that a lot of people never really think about these sorts of things have now come to learn this term MCAS, right? What is it? Well, part of what it is something that corrects an issue that used to cause airplane crashes. Mike, you remember some famous crashes in the past. Oh, the Air France crash off the coast of Brazil about a decade ago, or the Colgan Air crash here in the U.S. about the same time, where pilots in a panic did the opposite of what you're supposed to do when a plane seems to be stalling. They tried to climb too soon. Actually, you're supposed to pitch the nose down, regain airspeed, and come back up. Well, this system was supposed to do that automatically. Instead, it seems to have rather clearly contributed to the Lion Air crash in Indonesia, and likely, as we sort of see more of these pieces of the puzzle come together, contributed to the Ethiopian crash too. That system, by the way, also made necessary by putting the new engines on this plane, sort of changed the weight and balance of the aircraft a little bit. The aircraft would have sort of tended to pitch up, and so this system intended to keep it down.
And another thing that's come up is training. That's been another question mark. And then, we were just hearing, one of the other issues that has come up is certification of the jets, that the airlines themselves are kind of involved in this. And we think, well, it's the FAA doing it. Talk to me about those issues, because they've certainly come front and center in the last couple of days.
Right. The pitch that Boeing was making to airlines with this airplane is that you could kind of have the best of both worlds. This was, in all the right ways, a new aircraft, better fuel efficiency, better range, but on the other hand, not such a big departure from the old airplane. You could just drop it into your fleet. The same pilots could fly it. They didn't need a lot of new training. Well, we're seeing more and more that there was this one important difference on a plane that, yeah, in some respects wasn't anything all that new. This wasn't like the Dreamliner, this brand new airframe, but this one important difference that did change the way the airplane flew. Now pilots are going to have to learn about yet another change, but at least they're going to get that education. In terms of the certification, yeah, we see now, not the only industry where this happens, where a manufacturer is sort of able to self-certify, as it's being called, where you don't always have the regulators over their shoulders. It was all well and good as long as the industry was as safe as it had become. And look, in the aggregate, it's still true, and this is what people in the industry have all said. It's the safest it's ever been, and yeah, you get on a plane today, you are safer generally than you've ever been. But here we have these two devastating crashes within 5 months of one of the latest and greatest aircraft, what was supposed to be one of the safest aircraft out there. Obviously, something went wrong, and that's what we're talking about now.
Calvin Scoville is the Transportation Department's Inspector General. He was testifying today. He said this clearly: confidence in the FAA as the gold standard for aviation safety has been shaken. How do they reshape their image as a result of this?
Yeah, and one question people are asking, well, when will the FAA recertify the plane, right? And what's interesting now is that the answer to that question kind of isn't enough. In the old days, yeah, that would have been it. When the FAA says, okay, the plane's safe, everybody around the world would have looked to the FAA for guidance. I'm not so sure it's going to happen quite like that this time. Yeah, they're going to have to make real changes. I mean, this isn't something where it's just a question of public relations. They're going to have to convince airlines and governments and ultimately the flying public around the world that they're not just leaving this in the hands of Boeing. It's partly a resources question. Partly here Boeing was competing for engineering talent against companies, or the FAA rather, competing for engineering talent against companies like Boeing, right? So yeah, they need more people, but they also, this relationship that in some ways seems like it was maybe too close. Collaboration's good, but they are still a regulator and the regulated company. They're going to have to convince everybody that that's
yeah, and people are going to be watching that. Seth, always a pleasure to have you on our broadcast.
Likewise, Mike. Thank you.
In Yemen, a deadly airstrike